Hello class, welcome to Unit 6.3A, Systems of Equations, using the Elimination Method. So the first thing you want to know about elimination is this is the preferred method when both your equations are in standard form. Now, a couple steps to follow while you're thinking about this is, first is make sure both equations are in standard form, and we know how to, do that if we need to. Then we need to make sure that we convert one or both of the equations so that one of the variables eliminates itself when combining the two equations. So this is where we may have to, or a lot of times, just multiply by a number to try to force those two variables to line up. And you'll see what I mean in a minute. And then what we're going to do is add the left sides and right sides of the equations together. And what should happen is one of these will eliminate itself. So the last step then is once you have that one variable solved for, then again you can just substitute it to solve for the other, just like you did in substitution method. So let's take a look at what that looks like. All right, so when you look at example 1 here, we want one of these variables to eliminate itself. The first thing we want to just kind of double check is, are our x's lined up, y's lined up, numbers lined up? Both of the equations are in standard form. So the question is, if I add these two together, will I end up eliminating something? So when you solve, if you look at the x plus x, that's going to be a 2x, but a y minus y, that's going to be 0. That's what we want to see. When we look at that y plus y, they are the same thing, so we are going to add these two together. So what's going to end up happening is x plus x is 2x, y minus y is 0, and 6 plus 4 equals 10. And what you see happen right there is they eliminate themselves. This is now going to allow us to solve for x. So if we look at that, the next step is divide both sides by 2, and x equals 5. So that is the first part of the equation. And this is where we're going to just kind of use the substitution method to just solve back through. So if we look at that 5, that's an x, we can say, all right, 5 plus y equals 6. And then if we subtract 5 from both sides, we now have y equals 1. So our answer would be x is 5, y is 1, and that would be our intersection point. Okay, so let's look at another one here. And then we have 6x plus 3y equals 1 and 6x minus y equals 9. So again, we're kind of just double checking that they're both in standard form, which they are. And then we also want to see if something's going to eliminate itself. So we have 6 and 6x. So if we add them together, that's going to be 12 and a 3 minus a 1. Technically, you remember that 1 is always kind of in there. But nothing's going to cancel. So this is where we're going to have to use or look at one of these equations to try to multiply by something to force one of them to cancel. Now, when we look at the 6x, 6x, they're already the same number. So, that's going to be something we want to consider. But we need to make sure one's positive, one negative. So if we multiply everything in this equation by a negative 1, okay, that's going to rewrite this to negative 6x. That's going to be a plus y. And that's going to be a negative 9. And if now we look at that other equation with it, now our 6's can cancel because negative 6 plus 6, well, that's 0. 3 plus 1 would be 4y. And then negative 9 plus 8 is negative 8. Well, that eliminates those x's when you have negative 6x plus 6x, which is now going to allow us to solve for y. If we divide by 4, y is going to equal negative 2. Okay, and if we have y equals negative 2, then we can look back up to these equations. It doesn't matter which one we start with. If we just plug it into that 6x, so that's going to be 6x plus 3 times negative 2 equals 1. So now we have 6x minus 6 equals 1. if we add 6 to both sides, then we have 6x equals 7. If we divide by 6, x equals 7/6. So that should end up with an answer of 7/6 and -2 as our answer. Okay, so take a minute now to kind of pause and solve these problems before you move on and check your work. All right, good luck. Okay, so when you kind of work with these problems, I always just kind of picked one, like right here, we can see the y's canceled first. So if we add those two together, we can now solve for x, plug it back in, solve for y, get our answer. In this second one here, it doesn't look like x's will cancel. As they are, y's aren't going to cancel, but all we'd have to do is multiply by -1 in order to then, make this equation. Now our y's are going to cancel. Now we can solve for x, and now we can plug in and solve for y. This third one here, looks like this one's already set up that your x's are going to cancel. Once they solve for y, plug it back in, solve for x, and we have our answer. And then lastly here again, we see that -2y, -2y, they're not going to cancel as is. So we're going to have to multiply one of them by a -1. Now we have a new equation. Now our y's will cancel. That'll allow us to solve for x. And again, plug it in and then solve and go from there. Now it's not always possible that we're going to be solving the exact same way, but we should end up with the same answer. Okay, let's take a look at a few more. Okay, the example 2s for elimination method. What we're going to see here is 5x plus y equals 9, 10x minus 7y equals -18. As we can see, none of these are going to cancel as is. So that means we just need to decide what are we going to multiply so that something will cancel. So when we look at the x's, we have the option of, either trying to multiply by a -2, so that 5 times -2 is -10. Or if you have this plus 7, -7, we have the option of multiplying by a 7 so that your y's cancel. So it really doesn't matter which one you do. I always try to pick the one that looks like it's going to be an easier one. Maybe we don't have to multiply by a negative. So what I'm going to look at this here and say is, all right, if that's a positive y, that's a negative. If I multiply everything by 7, that's going to make those cancel. So when we do that, 35x, and you can see right here that those y's are going to cancel. And now that we have them set up, now we can add them together. So 45x, 7 plus 7 is 0, 63 minus 18 is 45, and that allows us to solve for x. X equals 1. There's our first one. And then we want to go back and plug that in. So again, whichever equation looks easier to solve. So I'll go with that first one. 5 plus y equals 9, subtract 5. And y is going to equal 4. So our answer is 1, 4. Okay. Look at the second example. Now this one here, we're looking at this and saying, well, the x's, they're lined up, y's line up, but I can't do anything very easy just to multiply anything by 2 to get to a 7 or anything by 6 to get an 8. So this one here, we might have to kind of figure out which one do we want to solve for. Now, I'm going to look at these x's, and, because they aren't going to cancel, this means we might have to multiply both of them. And what that's going to look like is, if we look at just focus on that x, if we multiply everything by 7 for the first one and everything by 2, that's going to at least get us both to -14, -14. But we want one negative and one positive. So let's make that x, or that second one, by -2. And when we distribute that, okay, so we're just going to rewrite both of these equations. So let's make sure we distribute. And what you'll see happen here is there's a negative 14x. Okay, everything else also has to be getting distributed too. Now this one here, when we multiply by -2, what's going to happen is when we do that first one, that becomes positive. And that's what we want to see. We want to see one of those variables cancel. Now we still need to multiply everything else. So negative 16y. Okay, now both of these are supposed to be equal signs. And then what we can do is say, all right, plus 10. Now this is where we get to add them together. And 14 minus 14, that's 0. So we got a 62, or a 42 minus 16. So that looks like that's going to be a 36y. And that looks like that's going to be 52. Excuse me, that's not a 36. That is going to be a 26. 42 minus 16. And then what we can do is divide by 26. So that y equals 2. Now, again, once you get one of these, we need to go back and substitute in. So I'm just going to go into that first one. Negative 6, or 2x plus 6 times 2 equals 6. So negative 6, 2x plus 12. Subtract 12. Then we can just solve. And divide by -2. Divide by -2. X equals 3. All right, put those two answers together. And our answer is 3, 2. All right, let's take a look at some practice. All right, take a minute here to kind of pause through. As you see, there will be a mix of things that we need to multiply. But the objective here is always the same. Find one of these variables. Is it going to be easier to multiply my x's? Or is it going to be easier to cancel a y? And then we just need to multiply and add from there. All right, so let's take a look. Pause here and solve these before you move on and check your work. Okay, good luck. Okay, in this first one, I chose to multiply by -3 because of 3 times -3. That'll allow the y's to cancel. And when you add everything else together, that'll allow us to solve for x, plug it back in, solve for y, and there's our answer. In this second one, now we could do either one. We could do x's or y's. I chose to just multiply by y, so your y's, or the y's will cancel, multiply by 3. You could have got the same answer by multiplying by 4, so your x's cancel. So if your work doesn't look exactly the same, don't be too alarmed, but we should end up with the same answer. And let's look at the other two. So this one here looks like we decided to multiply by a 2, get that answer, which is going to allow us to solve for x when our y's cancel. Once you have your x, plug it back in, solve for y, and there's our answer. And this last one doesn't look like there's any easy way of going about these, but I'm just looking at the 2 and 5 here, and just going to multiply to get rid of our y's first. So that means we'll have to multiply 1 by a 5, 1 by a -2, get our new equations over here, which now allow the y's to cancel so we can solve for x. Once we have x, plug it in, solve for y, and here's our answer. Okay, guys, don't forget that you're at home day to make sure you're working on that Canvas assignment. Good luck. Have a great day.